Hello, welcome back to another episode from Pale Horse Survival and Tactical. I'm Bill, glad you could join me. Today we're going to construct a survival hammock from paracord. Stay tuned. Hey, welcome back. Just want to go over briefly how I got started here. I found two small trees here which are exactly 10 foot apart, and I'm going to make this construct this hammock starting out 10 foot in length, and so we're going to add some suspension loops later on towards the end, and some spreader bars, so it's going to shrink it up a little bit. So I still want to have at least a good 6 or 7 foot, at least 7 foot on the inside part in order to lay down on it. So this is just how I'm doing mine. How you do yours, if you choose to make one, is up to you as far as dimensions go, but this is I'm just going to outline the dimensions that I'm using here personally. So what I did was I ran a piece of paracord between the two trees, and the inside measurement is exactly 10 foot, and I stood up to the line, and the line is right about eye height for me. I want to, because the width is going to shrink as we add all the meshes into the interior here between the top and bottom line, so it's going to shrink in width. So I wanted to start out fairly wide, so we'll have a decent width on the finished product. I don't want it too narrow. I want it to be fairly comfortable. So I ran this between the trees, and I pulled it pretty taut, because if you don't, the weight of your down lines here are going to cause a pretty big sag. Just a slight sag's no big deal, but you don't want a real big sag in it, because it's going to throw the shape of your hammock off. And what I'm doing right now, I'm adding the drop lines, and I'm putting these over the top horizontal line with a lark's head, or also known as a girth hitch. I'll put a link to that, how to do that, in the description box below. I covered that not too long ago in the in this Knotcraft series. Pardon my voice, allergies are killing me. And the length of these, I double the line over to get the length before I cut it, and it's just going all the way down, touching the ground with probably a couple inches to spare. And you want to have enough length, you don't want to run short on those. Now I did run a bottom line down here between the two trees, but as we add all these meshes on the interior, as we just discussed, the width is going to narrow on the hammock. So we'll have to raise this bottom line up and adjust the height of that. And then in order to get it square on both ends, I'll show you how to use a stick for that as a measuring tool. So in other words, you don't have one narrow end and one wide end when we terminate these drop lines onto the bottom. And that's later on in the build that we'll cover that. So I'll go ahead and keep adding these interior drop lines, and then we'll start in on the adding the meshes, the wide and narrow meshes. Like I said, I just double the paracord over to get my length before I cut it. I hold it up to the top line, kind of eyeball it, double it over, bring the ends together at the bottom, and then cut it to get my length. And then the lark's head, there's two ways you can run this. You can either run the loop from your side over and then feed your two tails through that, but you want to run everything in the same direction to keep everything uniform and neat looking. So what I'm doing is I'm putting the bite or loop on the outside of the top horizontal line, bending it over, and then I reach through and I grab the two tails. Draw it up tight, and it grips the line. Now the spacing between these drop lines, I'm going exactly right about 4 inches, and the width of my palm, from the outside of my palm to this knuckle right here on when my palm is flat, is just about 4 inches across. So I'm holding that up to get an inside measurement. It doesn't have to be exact. You wouldn't want it off by like an inch. It's going to throw the shape of your meshes off on the interior. But right here, from the end of this knuckle to the outside of the palm, it lines up pretty good. So I've got just about a 4-inch spread, and dress it up, tighten it up, and go on to the next one. On the outside, bend the loop over, grab the tails, pull them through. I'm about halfway across this thing, so we'll get started on the meshes in a little bit. It's just very time consuming. It's a lot of repetitious work here, building something like this, and the same method can be used to construct nets. Okay, I've got all the drop lines installed. It's 26 total, spaced approximately 4 inches. And I'm going to go ahead and get started on the meshes now. And we're going to go ahead and start the meshes over here on the left side. Stay tuned. The left side. And the way we're going to start this is you take your end drop line here. This tree's kind of leaning, so this drop line's going over the trunk, and we'll have to compensate for that as we work on this here. It's not exactly ideal, but we'll make it work. So you take your beginning drop line here, grab your inside. You have 2 lines on your first drop line since it's doubled over. Grab your inside facing line. On your next drop line, you want to grab the inside facing line on this one. We're going to start working on a top line of meshes going across. These are going to be the small meshes, and then the large meshes will be on the end, on the border, on the ends, and we'll get to those later. So basically what we're going to do here, we're going to use a square knot, also known as a reef knot, for this. And when you tie this, you want to do it in the same direction each time, so everything looks uniform and clean. You don't want any alteration on it in this, so it's very repetitious once you get started. So a reef knot or square knot consists of 2 overhand knots tied in opposition to one another. And basically you just go left over right, pull that through, and then underneath you're going to go right over left. So it'll be the right side going over the left. Before we snug it up, we want to get our width here. And you can always loosen these if you have to a little bit to make it larger, just like I'm doing here, or cinch it up to make it smaller. So before we tighten it down, we want to get our width. Now what I'm going to do for the full-size mesh, since I'm using my hand as a measuring tool, I'm going to go ahead and for the large meshes I'm going to use my full palm width, and for the small meshes here I'm going to use 4 fingers. And then for the large ones I'll stick my whole palm in to get the full-size mesh. So I'm just going to use the 4 fingers for the small mesh here. So you just stick your fingers in, and I like using my hands as a measuring tool because in the wilderness I'll always have my hands with me. So right there my 4 fingers fit in here pretty good. We can go ahead and snug that down now, just like that. That's mesh number 1, and you want your knot centered in the middle, so you just eyeball it. It doesn't have to be exact, but you want it pretty close. It's not an exact science. So we move over to the next one. We have this line hanging down. Take the inside line on your next down line, your next drop line. Remember, we're going left over right to start off, so you're taking, or I'm sorry, right over left. So you take your right line, go over the left just like that, and then when you come down on the bottom here, you're going to go left over right. Give it a see, that's a little loose, so we're going to tighten it up just a bit here. That's just about right. That looks pretty good. Make sure it's centered, snug it down. That way everything goes in the same direction and looks neat and uniform here. Move over to the next one. You have your inside. Grab the inside on the next one here. We're going right over left. And it's just very repetitious. We've got a lot of square knotting to do today, so, and I'm hoping I can get it done today with the amount of time I have. Then we're going to go left over right. Verify your width before you snug it. Looks good. Snug it down. Move to the next one. Right over left. Left over right. Give it a quick check for width. Verify, looks good. Off to the next one. Right over left. Left over right. Quick check for width. See things from my perspective. Right over left. Left over right. Right over left. Left over right. You just repeat the same pattern over and over. Right over left. Left over right. That one's got to go a little bit tighter. There we go. Dress your knots, keep everything nice and neat. Okay, I have a whole row of the first line of meshes on here. Now we're at the end. This is on the right side. We started on the opposite side. So now we're going to add a large mesh. And what I'm going to do to measure that is, as you remember, I used 4 fingers to measure these. To measure the large meshes, I'm going to stick my entire palm in here. And I'm going to use this, thumb and all, as the measuring tool here. So it'll look like that when we're done. So it's the same pattern, right over left. Left over right. Before you snug it down, get your width. So we got a gap down here, so we need to close that up. These overhand knots are very easy to adjust with. See, now that's pretty good. I could get it in there, maybe just a hair smaller. I stick my entire palm in here, including the thumb. And that's with everything closed, fingers and thumb tucked to the side of the palm. I stick that in there, looks good. So I'm going to go ahead and give that the old heave-ho. So that's our first large mesh. And then as we continue back this way, we're going to go ahead and we're going to start putting in our diamond meshes. And those are going to be the same width because we're building off this one here now. So those will be the same exact width. The entire palm going in here. So we'll go ahead and start working on those now. So the same deal, right over left. Left over right. Snug it just a little bit, but leave your slack in there so you can get your width adjusted. That's pretty good right there. You shouldn't have to force your hand in, just comfortably. It should fit in there comfortably. So now we move over to the next one. Same deal, right over left. Left over right. Check it for size. It's just a little bit big. Again, they don't have to be exact, but you should be fairly close. That's not bad. Okay, continuing on. I just repositioned the camera. Our next large interior mesh right over left. Left over right. Give it a size check. Next one over, right over left. Left over right. It's just a continuous pattern. It just keeps repeating itself. Size check. Probably tighten that up just a little bit. That's not bad. Moving over to the next one. Right over left. Left over right. Size check. Snug it down. Moving right along. Left over right. Size check. Looking good. If this is going to be your first time building one of these. So We're coming down to the end. Same thing, right over left. Left over right. Give it the old width gauge there. Okay, now we come down to the end, so we're going to take our last drop line here, and this is the end drop line, and same thing, right over left. Left over right. Gauge it for width. Looks pretty good. Pull that tight. And then you come onto the inside and you can have these two hanging down. So ignore these two for now. On the end, you'll have these two. So these are the ones we start connecting to make our diamonds. Roughly diamond shape. So you do those, and the next one over will be this. The next over will be these two, and then these two. It's just a repeating pattern. You keep going across and back and forth and working your way down until we reach the bottom, and then I'll demonstrate how we're going to terminate. See, that's too tight. I can't get my hand in there. So you just back that out. These overhand knots work really good for that. See, I get my hand in there comfortably. You can make this out of any color paracord that you wish. You could even use different colored paracords if you want a multicolored one. I use OD green for this because my entire survival model is based upon my bug out model rather is based upon keeping a low profile and being covert. In other words, if I have to head into the wilderness, I don't want flashy colors. Everything I have is flat camo or OD green. Even when I go camping, I prefer to keep a low profile. It's good to polish those skills. Noise, light, litter, discipline. Keep everything sharp. And I refer to this as a survival hammock because it's more than just a sleep system, which obviously you sleep in a hammock. It can be used for other purposes too. It's multi-use. I'm going to demonstrate some of those uses in another video or two when we get this done. Okay, I finally finished all of the interior meshes here. It's quite time consuming, and I'm kind of rushing the sunset to get this finished up. So What I did was, you can see how the drop lines have significantly shortened here. They were way down here on the ground. So as you add all these knots and meshes in here, it shortens the length of the drop lines. And so I just kept adding meshes until I've got about 4 or 5 inches of cordage left on the bottom of some of these drop lines. Some are longer than others. You know, I didn't measure them when I initially installed the drop lines with the girth hitches. So as soon as I got them, you know, some of them got short. I wanted to leave enough slack on the bottom end here to terminate these ends. So you have to kind of judge this by your shortest lines here. So anyways, I took the bottom horizontal piece that I had. I brought it up the tree trunk, so it's more or less level with the bottom edge of these meshes, and I snaked it in between, threaded it through here in a snake fashion, in and out, all the way down, just through these bottom meshes here, just above the knots, all the way down to the end there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get a stick, and I'm going to measure the distance between the top and the bottom, since this one seems to be positioned pretty well here. And then I'll put a mark on the stick, and I'll go down to the other end, and I'll use that as a measurement to adjust the distance, the width on that one before I tie it off nice and tight. And then we're going to come back and we're going to terminate these ends and tie them to this horizontal piece. Stay tuned. Okay, so here's the bottom line that I just measured with the stick to make sure the width between the top and the bottom was fairly close, and it is. So I have it pretty taut here. So what we're going to do is we're going to start securing these bottom drop lines. We're going to terminate these so we have slack in this. So we'll pull it back, and we'll be working on the top up there and secure those girth hitches too, so they don't slide on this this paracord, which is kind of slick. So just take it and pull it back so we can get it nice and tight on these. Take one of your lines, you have two here obviously, loop it through your mesh and over the horizontal line that we figure eighted, we snake through here. We're going to throw another reef knot in here. You got left over right, right over left. and pull it as tight as you can. Now see how that grips the line now. Well, we got a little bit of slippage. We're also going to take the slack that we have back here. Once we untie this, we get these lines secured. Untie this, put the hammock down on a level surface, and we're going to, we have a lot of slack here. And we're going to run this through, and we're going to knot each one of these again, just for a lot of added insurance. So again, you just loop it through. Left over right. Right over left. And lastly, we'll come through and cut all of these and then burn them with a lighter to melt the ends, keep everything nice and neat. So again, we're just taking one of the ends of the drop lines, running it through the mesh, through the diamond, over the horizontal line, and then just finish it off with a square knot. Pull it as tight as you can get it. So we'll just work our way all the way down this thing to the other end. Okay, I untied the line on the bottom here, and I used a spare piece of paracord and hooked it through one of the bottom corners of the mesh to pull this tight and hold it in place. So if you remember in the beginning, we used one solid piece, one continuous piece for the bottom line, and there's a reason for that, because once it's untied, I've doubled it back over and I've used single overhand knots. So where the mesh comes down, where we knotted it onto the bottom line a little bit ago with the square knots, I've doubled the line back over, brought it back through, and I've looped it around the base of the knot, the base of the mesh, where it's knotted to the bottom line, and ran one single overhand, and then I pull it tight, so this really makes the edge a lot stronger. So there's this gives two lines rather on the edge here, which really strengthens the hammock. So I'm just hitting every one of these knots here and going on down. So I'll go ahead and set you guys up here so you can watch me finish this thing up, and then I'm going to do the top in a little bit. Stay tuned. So this is the last one I just did. So this one isn't knotted. This one is, so it's every other. So you just make sure your tails stay underneath, because we're going to cut these and burn the ends. So here's the end, the line that I've been knotting around the base of these. So just bring it through. And then right back through, just like that, to produce a single overhand knot, and then just pull it tight. You'll see how that just cinches that down. Really secures these. Now they won't move. These won't slide, because now they're locked in with this extra horizontal piece on the end. So that eliminates all of the movement. We're going to do the same thing up there on the top on those those lark's heads. So here's every other. This one's not knotted. This one is. So we're going to come through. Make sure your two ends here that we're going to get rid of, just make sure those are out on the bottom. So you come through, make sure you go underneath, and then just feed it back through just like that. Just single overhand, that just locks that all in and keeps it from, just like that. Now it's not going to move. Right now they move. See how that moves? So they're locked to this one single piece that's not even spliced. That's the original. That's all the same piece of that bottom. That was the excess on the end. That's why when you make these, you want to have that excess there. Alright, so we're going to go, this one we bypass. Keep this running on the same side. This here is the one that we knotted. Go right around the base of it. So it just pinches it nice and tight to that original bottom horizontal line. This really makes for a very strong edge. Just like that. And now they're locked in. They don't go anywhere. Skipping that one, here's the other one that's knotted. Go right around it, and then loop it back through. Just like that. Now we're going to come over here. I'm going to terminate it. Skip that one. Make sure I'm in frame here. Skip that, obviously. That's above the line. This is the end piece. It's going to go right around just like the other ones. Actually, I'm going to do that a little bit different. I want to anchor that end piece pretty good. I'll throw 3 security half hitches on that. Dress it up, make it look nice. There we go. Now we can just cut this piece and we'll trim them up a lot closer. Okay, now we're going to go to work on the top. It's basically the same principle. I have a spare piece of paracord here. I'm going to run around this last loop, that last girth hitch. I want to stretch that back to about right there. Go ahead and tie this off. And what that's going to do, it's going to hold. Okay, now that I got that mesh straightened out here, I'm working my way down this thing. It's the same thing. Skip that one, go to this one. It's kind of a pain in the beginning when you start doing this. You have like 10 feet of cordage to feed through every knot. Just like before, pull it tight. Skip that, go to this one. I'm just putting single overhands in here. Lock those girth hitches down so they don't slide, and also greatly reinforces this edge here, just like that. Pull it tight. You can see now they don't slide, they're locked in tight. Just like that.